first thing the cameras caught was the bride's smile. It was slow, elegant, cold. Crystal chandeliers shimmered above the grand ballroom of Hanmin City's most powerful families. Politicians, investors, media. Every lens pointed toward the stage where Chairman Ryu sat in his wheelchair, dressed in a perfectly tailored black suit, hands folded calmly over the polished metal rims. He looked unshaken. He looked untouchable. Then Corin took the microphone. "I cannot marry a man who cannot stand beside me." A ripple of uneasy laughter moved through the hall. She didn't smile. "I refuse to marry a broken man." The silence that followed felt violent. Cameras zoomed in. Gasps echoed. A champagne glass shattered somewhere in the back. Kimbon didn't move. Not a flinch. Not a blink. But his knuckles tightened against the armrest. Aaron stepped back, lifting her dress slightly as she descended the stage. "This engagement was a mistake," she added softly, just loud enough for every microphone to catch. "The Ryu Empire needs strength." She walked past him without looking down. And in the far corner of the stage, the interpreter, tall, dark-skinned, composed in a fitted ivory dress, stood frozen with the translation mic still in her hand. Cynthia Okari had been hired to translate for foreign investors. She hadn't been hired to witness an empire implode. The hall erupted into chaos. Board members rushed forward. Security whispered into earpieces. Investors were already on their phones. Kimbon finally lifted his gaze not to Aaron's retreating back, but to Cynthia. She was the only person in the room not staring at him with pity. Her expression wasn't sympathy, it was calculation. Welcome to Afro-Korean TV Stories, the place for dramatic, emotional, and heart-touching stories you'll love. If you're new here, hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications. Like and subscribe cause you don't want to miss any part of this intense story. That night, Ryu conglomerate shares dropped 9% before the Asian markets even closed. By midnight, the emergency boardroom lights were on. "You cannot appear alone in public," one executive snapped, slamming a report onto the long glass table. "Our rivals are circling." "She humiliated him deliberately," another added. This was strategic. Director Kang Hyun stood near the window, arms crossed. "The damage is reputational, not structural." "For now," someone muttered. At the head of the table, Kimbon listened in silence. "They questioned your capability," an older board member said carefully. "Investors equate physical strength with authority. It's archaic, but perception moves markets." Kimbon's voice was calm. "Get to the solution." A pause. Then the most senior advisor cleared his throat. "We replace her." The room went still. "With who?" Kang asked. "The interpreter." Silence again, this time heavier. "She was already present," the advisor continued. "She's educated, unknown to tabloids, graceful under pressure. Foreign background softens the narrative, makes this look like destiny instead of desperation." "You want him to marry a stranger in 3 days?" Kang's voice sharpened. "I want stability." Kimbon leaned back slightly. "Bring her." Cynthia hadn't even made it home when the black car pulled beside her. She stared at the tinted window for a moment before the rear door opened. Inside, Kimbon sat alone. "No security?" she asked as she entered. "They're nearby." The car door shut. For a moment, neither spoke. "You translated flawlessly," he said. "That's my job." "You didn't look surprised." "I was," she replied. "I just don't perform emotion publicly." A faint flicker of something crossed his face. Approval, perhaps. "You understand what happened tonight?" "Yes," she said evenly. "She framed you as incapable, and do you believe that?" Cynthia met his eyes directly. "No." That surprised him. "Why not?" "Because a weak man would have reacted." The car hummed quietly along the river road. He studied her more carefully now. The confidence, the stillness. "I'm being advised to remarry immediately." "I assumed as much. To you." She didn't gasp, didn't flinch. Instead, she asked, "What are the terms?" He almost smiled. 1-year contract, full financial independence, legal protection, private settlement at the end. You're free to walk away. And during the year? You attend events. Present unity. No emotional obligations. She looked out the window at the city lights. "I want a seat in board meetings." His expression sharpened. "Welcome back, besties. This is Afro-Korean TV Stories. And honey, buckle up because this story is about to take you on a ride you'll never forget. If you're ready for danger, obsession, and a love story that'll have your heart racing, you're exactly where you need to be. Drop that like, share with your girls, and subscribe because trust me, you need to see what happens next. And yes, kindly tell me where you are watching from. That's not decorative wife behavior. I'm not decorative. Silence. I also want access to financial reports. For what purpose? To make sure your enemies aren't sitting at your table. A long pause. Do you often negotiate like this? He asked. Only when the stakes are high. The car slowed as they reached a red light. You realize this makes you a target. She turned back to him. I was already on stage when she detonated your reputation. I'm already in the blast radius. That did it. For the first time that night, Kimbon laughed softly. 72 hours, he said. That's how long we have before markets open again. I'll need 24 to think. You have 12. She held his gaze. Then I'll give you an answer in 10. The wedding was private. No media, no spectacle, just signatures. 3 days after being publicly discarded, Chairman Kimbon Ryu married Cynthia Okari in a quiet civil ceremony attended only by legal counsel and director Kang. The headlines exploded anyway. Disgraced chairman remarries foreign translator. Desperate damage control. Who is Cynthia Okari? By the time she entered the Ryu estate that evening, drones were hovering outside the gates. Inside, the mansion felt colder than the marble floors suggested. Staff lined the entrance hall, bowing stiffly. Cynthia stepped forward calmly. Good evening, she said first. The staff exchanged quick glances. Kimbon watched closely. She wasn't intimidated. That unsettled him more than hostility would have. His study was exactly how she expected: dark wood, floor-to-ceiling shelves, stacks of untouched files. She moved toward the desk without asking permission. These reports, she said lightly, lifting one stack. Why are they unsigned? His jaw tightened. Because I haven't approved them. Or because you haven't reviewed them. A beat. She met his gaze again. Not challenging, just direct. I'll reorganize your schedule, she continued. You're overexposed in ceremonial roles and underexposed in strategic appearances. You've been here 5 minutes, and I can already see inefficiencies. He wheeled slightly closer, careful. She leaned forward, lowering her voice. You didn't marry me to be careful. The air shifted, something electric. For the first time since the ballroom humiliation, Kimbon felt something unfamiliar. Not pity, not anger, possibility. Outside, the media storm intensified. Inside the mansion, Cynthia placed the first file neatly in the center of his desk. Show me who betrayed you, she said quietly. And this time, he did. By midnight, the study floor was covered in documents. Cynthia had kicked off her heels and rolled up the sleeves of her silk blouse. The polished, elegant bride from the headlines was gone. In her place sat a woman with a pen tucked behind her ear and 3 financial statements spread across the carpet like a crime scene map. Kimbon watched from behind his desk. You're not overwhelmed? He asked. By numbers? She replied without looking up. No. By marrying into a political dynasty currently under attack? She paused, then finally glanced at him. That part is still processing. He almost smiled. She tapped a column on one of the reports. This offshore account. It was opened 8 months ago. Yes. Authorized by Executive Director Choi. He's been with my father since before I could walk. Loyalty and time are not the same thing, she said calmly. And this account lines up with the month your fiancée began distancing herself publicly. His fingers tightened slightly on the armrest. You think Aaron was involved from the beginning? I think she didn't wake up one morning and suddenly decide you were weak, Cynthia replied. Narratives are planted before they're performed. A slow silence filled the room. Director Kang knocked once before entering. He stopped short when he saw the documents scattered everywhere. You're still awake. We found something, Cynthia said before Kimbon could respond. Kang's brows lifted. She found something, Kimbon corrected quietly. Cynthia slid the file toward Kang. Look at the transfers. Small amounts at first, testing visibility, then larger movements. Kang scanned it quickly, his expression hardening. These were masked under infrastructure investments. Infrastructure doesn't root through a private political foundation, she replied. Kang looked at Kimbon, Councilman Lee. Kimbon's voice turned colder. Aaron's new fiancée. The pieces clicked into place. Public humiliation, political alignment, financial sabotage. Cynthia leaned back against the sofa. This wasn't emotional. It was surgical. And you just walked into it, Kang said bluntly. She met his gaze without blinking. So did you. For the first time, Kang allowed himself a faint nod of respect. The next morning, headlines intensified. Speculation, conspiracy theories. analysts questioning whether Chairman Ryu's leadership was compromised, and then CO Aaron went on television. She appeared composed, sympathetic. "I never intended to cause damage," she said softly during the interview. "But leadership requires vitality. Investors deserve transparency." "Are you implying Chairman Ryu is unfit?" the anchor pressed. "I'm implying the empire deserves someone whole." The clip went viral in minutes. Inside the Ryu estate, the television screen went black. Kim Bond's expression didn't change, but the tension in the room was suffocating. "They're baiting you," Kang muttered. "No," Cynthia corrected quietly. "They're reframing him." She turned to Kim Bond. "You cannot respond emotionally." He looked at her sharply. "I wasn't planning to." "Good. Because if you attack her publicly, it confirms instability." He wheeled closer to the window, staring at the city skyline. "And if I say nothing, they define you." A long pause. "What would you suggest, Mrs. Ryu?" His tone carried a faint edge. She stepped beside him, her reflection merging with his in the glass. "You don't defend yourself," she said. "You demonstrate control." "How?" "Host something bigger." Kang frowned. "Now, yes, a charity summit. Invite foreign investors, political leaders, humanitarian groups. Shift the narrative from scandal to strength." Kim Bond turned slightly toward her. "You think optics can erase humiliation?" "No," she said softly. "But unity can." He studied her face carefully. "And you'll stand beside me?" Her answer was immediate. "That's the point." 3 days later, preparations for the Mirage Foundation Gala were underway. Invitations went out with precision. The theme, resilient futures. Investors who had hesitated now felt compelled to attend. Curiosity alone guaranteed cameras. Back in the mansion, tension brewed beneath the polished surface. Cynthia walked into the main conference room mid-discussion. "Security routes must remain internal," one executive was saying. She took a seat without asking permission. The room went quiet. Kim Bond didn't interrupt. "I reviewed the guest list," Cynthia said calmly. "There are 2 individuals with direct ties to Councilman Lee." Director Choi stiffened slightly. "They're donors, their liabilities," she replied. Choi's smile thinned. "With respect, madame, this is corporate strategy, not translation." And with respect, she shot back evenly, "Corporate strategy is exactly what I'm discussing." Silence. Kim Bond's voice cut through smoothly. "Remove them." Choi hesitated. "Chairman, remove them," Kim Bond repeated. Choi bowed stiffly. As the meeting adjourned, Kang leaned closer to Cynthia. "You just made an enemy." She adjusted the folder in her hands. He was already one. The night of the gala arrived in a blaze of gold and camera flashes. Cynthia stood at the top of the staircase in a deep emerald gown that contrasted beautifully against her skin. The exact image the world had seen in leaked photos, elegant, composed, commanding. Kim Bond waited at the bottom, dressed in midnight black. When she descended, the room shifted. Whispers, speculation, admiration. He extended his hand not because he needed help, but because it looked deliberate. She took it. Cameras flashed. The image was perfect. Inside the ballroom, speeches began. Applause followed. Carefully curated optimism filled the air. Then Cynthia stepped to the podium. For a split second, the crowd murmured. The foreign bride, the replacement, the risk. She didn't rush. When structures face pressure, she began calmly. "Engineers don't abandon them. They reinforce them." Her voice carried steady authority. "Strength is not the absence of damage. It is the refusal to collapse." Across the room, CO Aaron stood near Councilman Lee, her smile tightening. Cynthia continued, "Chairman Ryu does not lead because he stands. He leads because he endures." Applause began slowly, then grew louder. Investors exchanged glances. The narrative was shifting. Kim Bond watched her with something dangerously close to awe. For the first time since the ballroom humiliation, he wasn't being defended. He was being reframed. The gala moved toward its crescendo. Champagne flowed. Deals were discussed. And then, the first explosion hit. A deafening blast shook the east parking structure. Glass rattled. Screams erupted. Security shouted into radios. Before anyone could react, a second alert came through earpieces. Device located near motorcade. Kang's face drained of color. "Chairman, we need to move." Security rushed forward, but Cynthia didn't step back. She moved closer to Kim Bond instead. "Evacuate the guests," she ordered calmly. "Madam, please." She placed her hand firmly on the back of his wheelchair. "I'm not leaving him." Cameras were still rolling. Smoke drifted through the glass entrance. Chaos roared outside. Kim Bond looked up at her. "You should go," he said quietly, "and confirm their narrative." she replied. Not happening. Sirens wailed in the distance. Security surrounded them, but she remained visible. Deliberate, unshaken. By morning, every major outlet carried the same image, the wheelchair-bound chairman in the center. His foreign wife standing beside him, hand steady on his shoulder. Not panic, not fear, defiance. Public sympathy surged. Investor confidence stabilized. And somewhere in the city, someone realized the assassination attempt had backfired. Inside the quiet aftermath of the mansion, as smoke-stained suits were discarded and security briefings intensified, Kim Bon finally spoke. They were willing to kill. Cynthia's voice was steady. Then we stopped defending. His eyes darkened and start exposing. By dawn, the Rio estate no longer felt like a residence. It felt like a war room. Security footage played across 3 monitors in Kim Bon's study. Grainy angles, parking levels, service corridors, a black sedan entering through a restricted gate. Director Kang stood stiffly near the screens. The explosive device was planted 32 minutes before detonation. Whoever authorized that gate access used internal credentials. Cynthia didn't look surprised. Director Choi? Kang asked quietly. Kim Bon's jaw tightened. Too obvious. Then someone beneath him, Kang said. Or someone he underestimated, Cynthia added. Both men turned toward her. She stepped closer to the monitor, zooming in on the vehicle. This car entered using temporary clearance. That means the access code was generated the same day. Kang's eyes narrowed. Only 3 people can generate that without board approval. Chairman, Cynthia said gently, who handles your medical transport logistics? There it was, a flicker. Lieutenant Park, Kang said under his breath. He coordinates secure movement routes, and he reports directly to Director Choi, Cynthia finished. Silence stretched thick in the room. Kim Bon exhaled slowly. Bring Park in. Lieutenant Park arrived within the hour, looking pale but composed. I heard about the breach, Chairman. I'm deeply U-authorized gate access for Vehicle 47B, Kim Bon said evenly. Park blinked. Yes, sir. It was cleared for equipment transport. What equipment? Kang pressed. Park hesitated. Just enough. Cynthia stepped forward. The vehicle carried no equipment. It carried explosives. Color drained from his face. I don't know what you're implying. Kim Bon's voice remained dangerously calm. You don't have to know. You just have to answer. Park swallowed. Director Choi instructed me to process the code. There it was. The name hung in the air like smoke. Cynthia didn't smile. She simply nodded once. Within hours, Director Choi was detained under suspicion of conspiracy, financial manipulation, and attempted assassination. His office was sealed, his accounts frozen. But the damage wasn't finished. Because when his encrypted messages were decrypted, they revealed direct communication with Councilman Lee. And worse, C.O. Arin. The press conference was inevitable. Kim Bon insisted on handling it personally. Cynthia stood beside him as they approached the podium. No wheelchair concealment, no dramatic staging. Just truth. The attempted attack against the Mirage Foundation gala was an act of desperation, Kim Bon stated calmly. Those responsible sought to destabilize leadership through violence. He paused deliberately. They failed. Flashbulbs erupted. Cynthia stepped forward next. Strength is not measured by how loudly you humiliate someone, she said clearly. It is measured by how quietly you rebuild. The statement spread across media within minutes. Evidence followed. Financial records, messages, transfers. Councilman Lee denied everything at first until the bank trails surfaced. His political career imploded overnight. And C.O. Arin? Her engagement dissolved in public scandal. For a brief moment, she requested a private meeting. Against Kang's advice, Kim Bon agreed. She entered the estate alone. Gone was the polished confidence. In its place stood a woman cornered. You ruined my life, she said softly. Kim Bon didn't raise his voice. You tried to ruin mine first. You were weak, she snapped suddenly. Everyone saw it. No, Cynthia replied calmly from her place near the window. They saw projection. Arin turned sharply toward her. You think you won? Cynthia held her gaze without hostility. There was no competition. Silence. Arin's composure cracked just slightly. You married him for power. Yes, Cynthia said evenly. And stayed for partnership. That silenced her. She left without another word. When the doors closed behind her, the mansion felt lighter. Days turned into weeks. The Ryu conglomerate stabilized. Investors returned. New ventures were announced: ethical infrastructure, international collaborations, transparent governance policies. The empire no longer relied on intimidation. It relied on strategy. And beside Kimbon in every meeting sat Cynthia, not as a symbol, as a voice. One evening, long after the headlines faded, she stood alone in the study holding a folder. The original contract, 1 year. Financial settlement, exit clause. Kimbon entered quietly. "You're reviewing terms?" She looked at him carefully. 6 months, she said. "Imawur. You don't ask what I'm thinking anymore." A faint smile touched his lips. "Because you usually tell me." She stepped closer, placing the contract on his desk. "I've rewritten it." He raised an eyebrow. She slid the paper toward him. He read silently. "Termination of contractual obligations effective immediately. No settlement required. No exit enforcement." He looked up slowly. "Are you leaving?" "If I were," she said softly, "I wouldn't remove the exit clause." Understanding dawned gradually. "You don't want this to be business anymore," he said. "No." Silence lingered between them, vulnerable, unarmored. "I almost disappeared that night," he admitted quietly. "After the ballroom, I considered stepping down." She didn't look shocked. "I know. You knew? You don't survive humiliation like that without questioning your existence." His voice dropped lower. "And you stayed." "I stayed because you didn't collapse." A long pause. Then she added gently, "But if we continue this, it has to be real." He looked down at his wheelchair briefly, at the metal frame he once hated, then back at her. Slowly, deliberately, he reached for the edge of his desk and pushed himself upward. It wasn't dramatic, it wasn't steady, but he stood supported, balanced against the wood, not to prove strength, but to close the distance. "I don't need a contract," he said quietly. He extended his hand toward her. "I need you." For the first time since she walked into that ballroom as a hired translator, Cynthia allowed herself to feel something unguarded. She took his hand, not to support him, but to stand with him. Their real wedding was nothing like the first. No press, no political elites, just a private ceremony in the estate garden at dusk. Director Kang attended, standing quietly in the back. The vows were simple. No strategy, no negotiation. When Kimbon spoke, his voice carried the kind of strength no investor report could measure. "Strength isn't standing," he said softly. "It's refusing to surrender." Cynthia smiled gently. "And resilience," she replied, "is choosing to build instead of burn." As night fell over Hanmin City, the Ryu estate no longer felt like a battlefield. It felt like foundation, not an empire built on fear, but on partnership. And somewhere beyond the gates, rivals recalculated, because the most dangerous thing in power is not a man who survives humiliation. It's the woman who teaches him how to rise from it, and this time, they would rise together. If you've made it this far, thank you for watching. Subscribe, drop a comment telling me the part that got you trilled, and don't forget to hit that like button.